You're watching CHCO-TV's gavel-to-gavel coverage of the May 2024 Committee of the Whole meeting for the Municipal District of St. Stephen. I'm Florence Mitchell. Today's meeting will begin with an update on the proposed Sharps disposal program. Under new business, Deputy Mayor Wheaton will make a proclamation for Lyme Disease Awareness Month. Councillor Heislip will provide an update on the world's oldest basketball court. Committee will discuss drafts of the electronic sign policy, council grants program policy, fee waiver and reduction request policy, community emergency plan bylaw, mining exploration municipal consent process, and 2024 sidewalk renewal program. Committee will consider making a grant application to Environmental Trust to clean up debris along the water's edge in Hanson Cove. Finally, committee will discuss the location of the Visitor Information Center. Now let's join committee in the Moosehead Room at the Garceland Civic Center in St. Stephen.
Okay, I'd like to call the meeting to order of the Municipal District of St. Stephen Committee of the Whole, Wednesday, May 15, 2024. And before we begin, I would like to respectfully acknowledge that we are gathered today on the ancestral, unceded territory of the Pesco-Demarcati people. Right now, I need to have somebody to move that the agenda be approved.
So moved. Second.
Okay, Councillor Eastman, and seconded by Councillor Harding. Any question? All those in favor?
Aye.
Nay?
Aye.
Motion carry. Are there any conflict of interest tonight? No? Now I need a mover and seconder for the adoption of the minute of the Committee of the Whole held April 10th, 2024.
So moved.
Councillor Heislip, seconder. Councillor Eastman. Any question? All those in favor?
Aye.
Nay? Motion carry. Next, we'll move on to the strategic initiative update. That's the proposed shard disposal program. And we have a verbal update. And I believe, Jeff, you're on.
Sure. Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. So just want to touch base. We had talked about bringing a program brief to this meeting. Since our last meeting, Mayor McEachran reached out to Minister Baucus to follow up on some of the commentary about potential funding, things like that. Minister Baucus did get back to us. Unfortunately, not with the answers we were hoping for, and because we had asked about funding, we'd also asked about obtaining her assistance in connecting us with the right people to discuss if we did a program like this. What's going to happen after we collect the needles as far as disposal. We don't want them just going to the landfill. We would like to use the incinerator potentially at the hospital. Previous requests for that were denied administratively. So we're trying to get that dialogue going again so that if we did go down this path, we had a disposal plan as well. And so that we haven't given up on the conversation, but the fact that the answers that we were hoping to get didn't come to fruition as quickly as we had hoped. We're just not ready to do a program brief at this meeting. So Mayor McEachran and I are both working from our connections to try and keep that conversation alive. And I also wanted to check in with our friends at the BIA and the Chamber of Commerce regarding the concept of downtown locations. And I'm meeting with their boards independently 2 days next week. So I'm going to bring that topic up with them and have at least an initial chat about thoughts, concerns to help feed the concept and the program development, or at least the proposed program development as we move forward. So, but it was slated to come to this meeting, so I want to make sure we did touch base at this meeting to let you know that it hasn't fallen off the radar. It's just we got set back a little bit more than we thought, so we're going to keep working forward in the coming days.
When we brought this up at the last council meeting, someone in the audience commented that we have a need for it in the town. And I was just Just wondering, do you have any statistics about the number of needles that were found during the community cleanup day? I know I was there. I did a lot in the center of downtown, well, a couple areas, but one in particular that I thought would find some, and I found none. Do you have any updates on that?
I wouldn't say that we have anything that would be statistically relevant. We have anecdotal evidence, such as what you were just saying. We've also, Mr. Morton has put into place a standing practice with his crew that whenever they go anywhere and they're doing any work, part of their hazard assessment and part of their site scoping is to look for any things like that and record it. So we are keeping our own numbers as well if we do encounter them. I can tell you the last cleanup at one of the major locations, the several guys on site, nobody saw any. But we're starting to set up processes where we are identifying and tracking that to help feed our knowledge as well.
I noticed at the community cleanup, it seemed like the only hot spots were there were locations where there were 10, 15, 20 found at one time, but it didn't seem that they were sporadically spread out. So I think it's just a matter of finding more so like the hot spots where there might be encampment zones. And then it seemed to me when I was talking with Avenue B about it at one point that they said it's mostly used in St. John by the community partners who want to dump it, because Avenue B can test the drugs that are actually found in the needles to see what drugs are in the community. So it's also, I don't think it would be used as much for like the singular needle found here and there, because Sean actually is doing a fantastic job at that. People tell me that they call protective services if they find one on the trail, and he's down there that afternoon just grabbing it safely. So I mean, that's the other thing when it comes to the box. Like, if it's more about it being a dumping zone for town staff, or for if there's a major cleanup or they find like a certain amount in one spot, then I see it being more so used for that instead of like the occasional, I found one, I'm going to go put it in. I'd probably just call Sean, and that seems to be what the public's doing, and he's doing a great job at that, so.
Yes, Jeff, can you elaborate a little bit more on what we were expecting and what we actually received? We were looking for funding, and did she give any idea that there was funding available, or?
No, the funding came back as basically there was no indication of, because we'd asked for what funding is available and which programs to apply to, like kind of give us the connections. And it was there was a direction to talk to the local pharmacies and those types of outlets, but there was no funding identified. And our request about the disposal side of the equation, the response letter was silent on. So it just didn't address the question at all. So there's, like I said, Mayor McEachran will be following up on that, and I will continue working with my friends in administration to see if we can't find a workaround for some of these issues.
Councillor Rodas, you mentioned that like 10 or 15 were found in certain site. Is this when they had the cleanup? Okay. Was that reported? Do you know?
Do you want me to clarify?
Yes, please.
I think if you speak with Angela Stubbart, who was the team lead, she shared that with me after, that there was one particular site where they just found like a larger amount, but that was because that site was being used predominantly as an encampment zone. So they had just stumbled upon it, and they had found a more significant amount in that area. So she felt it was between 10 and 15, I think, and that's not uncommon. That's what Avenue B told us, depending on what type of substance it is. She said sometimes when cocaine is injected, somebody can go through up to 40 needles in one time as a singular person. So she just said, if you find 40, it's not 40 individual people necessarily. It could just be one person who's there for a couple of days using. It just depends. But all of that information was helpful, because I couldn't understand why in town it seemed to be that there were these, when people tend to find them and share it, it's like they found 5 or 10 sometimes, and then occasionally they find 1. And I said, why would it be that one person would use 10 and one person would use 1? So she explained that it depends on the drug that that person's using and how they're injecting it. So, I mean, that's what I mean about hotspots. I think it's just a matter of how do we want to safely dispose, and maybe if the pharmacy can partner with our community and Sean is able to dispose in partnership with the pharmacy, we can avoid this altogether, a needle box itself, and I think that would serve its purpose just fine. But that's a lot to ask the pharmacy to do too, so it's just a matter of collaborating with them and seeing if they're comfortable with that.
I'm sorry, you go ahead.
Yeah, I've actually had citizens take pictures and send them to me, and they would be a pile of 4 or 5 needles together type thing. They even found a little bag of meth, and that was between Neighborhood Works and the middle school. So.
I was just wondering if it has been reported to the town, like if you get reports of this as well.
We do occasionally, and as Councilor Rhodes indicated, our standard practice is if we do get a report here, usually a crew of 1 or 2 people are dispatched within minutes to go to evaluate the situation, and generally it's an easy cleanup, and the guys do a great job of making sure that they get there as quickly as they can and deal with it. It's the same old thing with whether it's needles or whether it's potholes. If we don't know about it, we can't address it. And so we constantly try and encourage the community, our staff, whoever's out and about. The more eyes that are out there, the quicker that we can get on these things. And it's not a bad thing to pick up the phone and call the front desk here, or whoever. I mean, quite frankly, the front desk here probably will, or the fire hall will get you the quickest response. As much as citizens loves calling you folks, it adds another step, because then you guys are going to call us, and then we're going to send somebody. So it's great if they do pick up the phone. We'll be launching our new citizen portal as far as service requests coming in the very near future, as Celeste is just finishing up some final details on that. And that will be yet another mechanism where from a phone or from a computer you can identify a location and do a service request right from a digital source as well. So you get another tool that we'll be rolling out very shortly to allow people to report a needle, a pothole, a traffic light, whatever that service request might be. So trying to get all the eyes of the community looking so that we can address things more quickly and efficiently.
Thank you, Jeff. Any more conversation?
Thanks, Sean.
Oh, thank. Okay. Next, I'd like to read a proclamation, which municipal designation of May 2024 as Lyme Awareness Month. Whereas Lyme disease is one of the fastest growing vector-borne illnesses in the world, and whereas the population of ticks and the primary vector for the transmission of Lyme disease in New Brunswick and other parts of Canada is growing and expanding in New Brunswick, and whereas the number of New Brunswickers suffering from Lyme disease is increasing from one year to the next, and whereas awareness plays a key role in making this disease known to the public, as well as the steps to take to prevent contacting the disease. Now, therefore, I do hereby proclaim the month of May 2024 as Lyme Awareness Month in the Municipal District of St. Stephen, New Brunswick. Next article, conserve the world's oldest basketball court update. And I believe you have it in your agenda. Dave, were you interested in, did you have any more that you'd like to say about it?
Yes, Your Worship. That's pretty well self-explanatory there. The women's basketball, Maritime Women's Basketball Association, that was very successful. I think there's thanks there for the municipal district and for the mayor's reception, and it seemed like they enjoyed themselves and are willing to come back every year. So I think it was very successful, and I think the community kind of rallied around it. And I went to the championship game and seen a little bit of the one before, so it was well attended. And of course, we're always a little bit behind on these updates. There's been talks between Jeff and myself and Richard, and there's other things coming up, but that we'll identify those as we have more committee of the whole. So try to keep it updated. But it's been a lot of stuff going on for. It's been busy, but there's a lot of funding has to yet to come, and it'll be a lot busier in the next couple of years. So hold on.
Thank you, Councillor Heislip. Anybody else? I attended the games on the first day, anyway, and I was very surprised how many people were there, like from the community. And I also went to the reception that night, and everybody seemed to be very excited about what was going on. So that's very positive.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
So just as Councillor Heislip says, things are constantly moving and the reports are at a snapshot in time. So just to update kind of what's been going on the administrative side, we are, Mr. Otto has just sent over today a draft memorandum of understanding, trying to, as a kind of a renewed approach to the partnership between the two entities, between ourselves and Canada First Basketball. I haven't had a chance to review that in detail yet. It came in late this afternoon, but that is in play. We're also been working with RDC, being one of the New Brunswick funding agencies, on seeing if there's a way to streamline a funding application through to them, which will also limit the amount of administrative paperwork being done in-house for our municipal district. There's pros and cons to all these things, so we're trying to weigh out and see where the best where the sweet spot is for that. But yeah, so we got a few of these irons in the fire. We're just trying to get them ready to go so we can bring them in. I suspect at least one of the two items that we're working on would be ready for your council meeting in a couple weeks, possibly, hope maybe even both of them. And then we'll be able to get into more detail of some of the thinking and the plans there. But lots of moving parts right now, and as Councillor Heislip says, we'll bring more to the table as soon as it's ready.
Thank you. Any more comments or discussion? Okay, we move to the electronic sign policy, and that's that's a draft. Any questions or comments? Okay, Councillor Greenlaw?
Just, I did notice in there, like, for instance, if somebody pays for advertising on the sign and then the sign breaks or the power goes out for 5 days, there's nothing in there about a refund. So I just thought maybe we might want to put some language in there if we're going to refund it, if that kind of thing happens. Other than that, it's good.
Yeah, if I may, Madam Chair, no problem with that. Obviously, we would do that administratively anyway. But it's a nice comfort for anybody who decides to go through this program to see it written and not be at the mercy of the mood of staff on the day that it happens. So that's a point well taken. Just for the knowledge of everybody, Mr. Subner has been mainly the lead on this with just my overviewing drafts along the way, but it also has been looked at by our friends at the BIA. They had suggested some changes in the early days. I know Councillor Greenlaw was involved with that as well, and I think we've accommodated the request that they were looking. Again, the comfort language that they were looking for to make sure that what we were thinking was natural is actually in writing, so there is something for them to lean on if in an event of a disagreement. So I think we're pretty much with your blessing prepared to bring this forward to council at the next meeting for adoption with the amendment suggested by Councillor Greenlaw.
Okay, Councillor Rodas.
I just want a question for clarification. I know somebody had reached out from the cheer organization because the cheer information hadn't come up on the sign, and I know they've been told by the town that there's been some glitches with it. Can we kind of explain to the community what's going on with the sign currently with the tech side and why sometimes it might not be, like, is it fully functioning right now as is, or are we kind of having technical glitches, and is there any way we can sort that out?
There was a connection issue. It's working on Wi-Fi and line of sight, and yeah, Jeremy was updating, and he gets to the updates pretty quickly. It was just that it was re-showing the last one, and because of the connection issue, it just reverts back to what it knows rather than having blank. So yeah, apologies to the group that need that, but yeah, we'll keep on working on making sure it doesn't happen too often. So.
Okay. Councillor Wright?
Thank you. I noticed that if there's availability, the electronic sign may be used by nonprofit groups, et cetera, on a first come, first served basis. Is there a limit to the number of non-MDSS advertisements or postings that would be allowed to be used? Let's say if it becomes so popular, is there a cap on the number discussed, or is it just let's see how it goes and deal with that later if we need to, if it becomes too many requests?
Yeah, I think it would be a case of we can come back to this if there's the demand for it. Yeah, certainly it's a kind of a living document we can review and come back.
Are you getting a lot of demands for it? A lot of requests? Yes. Yes? Okay. It is a great sign. Okay. Anybody else? Okay, move on to the next one.
Just for clarity, we're
okay.
Moving that forward for adoption?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Council grant program policy, and this is also a draft. Jeff?
Sure. So you've seen this before, and there were some concerns. So Kevin and I went back and went through it all again. I think we've dealt with the majority of the concerns. We had talked about there was the draft document from which we worked had an exclusion for cemetery boards. We removed that exemption at this point. We have also built in the accountability, what we think is at least a good starting point for the accountability framework with the what we're asking for up front in the application, as far as all the money going in for not just our money, but all the money going into a project, as well as the required report, project completion report back, and failing that report coming in, you're not eligible for any future grants. So, if we roll this out, it will be we'll learn, as Kev says, these things tend to be living documents, and we learn along the way. But I do think that this is a pretty good point from which we can work. The nice thing is, if we can get this in place in short order, pending council's approval, we can start the advertising side of it and the public education side and reach out to our normal community groups that are looking for funding. Because the big thing here is, again, we're not funding normal operations, which we have historically done through the Town of St. Stephen grant program. So if you want to do a special project, we might contribute to that. But if it's just, hey, can we have $3,000 every year for eternity, so our books balance, that wouldn't be eligible. And that's going to take some education and some planning on part of other groups that historically have gotten this funding to figure out how they're going to address that. So we're trying to work on a communications plan. Celeste has got a list of the people that we've historically given grants to that we can reach out directly. But the program also requires that 2025 grant requests would come in September of 2024. So there's a somewhat short timeline for people to really think through their plans. So the sooner we can get this out and rolling, the quicker we can help these people get accustomed to the new system and get their applications in before our budget process.
Okay, Councillor Harding.
Thank you. Is this council grant a new name for community grant?
Yes, it's historically been called the community grant in our budget. But we can keep that name if it's more comforting to the council. The one thing about the council grants that I like it actually says council grant is it shows who the authority is. That it's approved by council. It's not approved by staff. Whereas the fee waiver one, which is the next one we on the list, is mostly able to be dealt with at the staff level. So that people know to whom they're going to be working and looking for approvals.
Thank you, and I'm glad to see that the grants have been lowered, right? Like 5,000 and 2,000, so people can't just apply for 20 or 30 or 40,000. That makes sense. Thank you.
I want to add my 2 cents. I think this is a fantastic draft. I think it's ready to go.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you, John.
Councillor Otis?
The only thing I was wondering about it is where it says in-kind support will be limited to the use of municipal property at reduced or no cost. So, for instance, would that, like for the St. Stephen High School youth who came in and wanted to do an Indigenous crosswalk, a Rainbow crosswalk, and a St. Stephen High School crosswalk, and we had agreed to support them with that, does that mean the in-kind support will be the use of the equipment to help with that, or does municipal property mean staff hours, and how do you sort of gauge that? Just because item 5 under procedure. If you can just clarify that, because that will help us with the language. Like if somebody comes to community and they say, I'd really like to, on an in-kind basis, borrow this equipment from MDSS because we're having, like I know even Milltown Activity Group, if they want to do an event in Milltown and they want to borrow something, like how do you measure in kind? Just because I don't want to end up debating some of that stuff at the council table if we don't have to, and we just know how in kind is defined. Or municipal property, how is municipal property defined?
Well, I think the important part of it that addresses your concern is actually the rest of that sentence, which is municipal property at reduced or no cost, municipal staff support, and loan of municipal equipment. So all those things qualify. It's just a matter of costing it out. And we have rates that we cost out our equipment at and our staff at anyway. So when someone's asking for $3,000 of in-kind support, we can do that math pretty quick. If it's however many hours of use of an operator and excavator, we can cost that real quickly. So I think lots of things are still on the table here as far as, hey, can you give us a hand with whatever? Knowing my team and their desire to be helpful, the odds are there'll be little jobs here and there that get done, just that maybe don't fall into this grant program because it's not a big project. Whether it's borrowing a barricade or stuff, we do that as a courtesy to groups, as a civic relations thing. Here it's more when you're planning out the fall fair or when you're planning out the lumberjack competition. We used to put a fair bit of work into taking equipment out there, setting up poles, doing that stuff for them. So it would be those kind of events, making sure that, if they're asking for cash donations, that's one part, but we're also tracking that in-kind cost because it does add up quickly and people don't realize. So if they're saying $3,000, we'll be able to say, all right, here's the cost of these pieces of equipment. What are you looking for? And help them really understand what's going to happen, what's available.
My second question would be, I know sometimes, even with Neighborhood Works, for instance, I know sometimes there's this insinuation from other government agencies that the municipality has to match a certain amount of capital funding in order for them to secure other funding. And I do agree that I agree with Councillor Harding. I like that it's very clear cut in the amounts. I like the amounts. I think smaller amounts actually helps a lot of different members of community, but not so much operational costs. But let's just say if there were a housing initiative that came our way that was a nonprofit community type housing initiative, where they were requesting a certain amount from the municipality as more of like a capital buy-in to match with other partners. Is there room to navigate that, or is that something, are we just really trying to hone in and stick to small community grants, and this is what this policy is really trying to reinforce?
For me, Madam Chair, this policy is about the $50,000 line item in the budget for council/community grants. Major projects like that, or the basketball court project, or whatever, may come that where RDC and ACOA and all these other big funding agencies are at play, that would be outside of the realm of this because it'd be well over the established thresholds for granting out of this program. So it would be, are we going to do a special take it out of our special projects budget? Are we going to take it out of reserves? Are we how are we going to fund it? If we're going to fund it, if we're really keen on it, that would come from another source of funding. This applies to that line item in your budget for those community grants.
My question is, you did mention that you would contact the people that have normally applied for these grants ahead of time, because that would be a little bit different. Usually they apply through a letter, right? So, which I think is great. And I also like the idea of having an application form. When they send a letter in, you sent them an application form and they know exactly what they need to do. And I like the fact that you're going to ask for a report at the end. I find that always works well. Thank you.
Yeah, Madam Chair, just on the reporting part of it, one thing that we'll administratively kind of work on if this gets approved is the nature of those reports. Obviously, unless council feels differently, my thinking on it is a $250 grant probably doesn't need a full council presentation, but some people that are up at the maximum levels of some of these things, probably it's a good opportunity for them to come in and recognize the contribution and explain to you the benefits that came out of the public money. So we'll work on some administrative protocols as to where certain thresholds are and what that report would need to look like for certain levels of donation going forward.
Another easy way around that, I think, in the nonprofit sector, I really enjoy, for instance, Fundy Community Foundation. They have a lot of donors and they like to give an impact report back. So I feel like for most of the individuals or organizations who end up getting a community grant or a council grant, I should say, they could just submit their information of what impact it had on community, and then at the end of the year, it can just be put in one infographic, like, here is how the council community funding went back into community, and this was the community impact, and that report can just come to committee of the whole, and we can just have a look at it and celebrate and move through. Because I do agree, I think it gets challenging to recognize all of the different players here and have the time to sit at committee and do all of that. So maybe a presentation on maybe some of the more significant projects that were funded, the 5,000 for instance, but the smaller, just kind of putting it together on an infographic for us or an impact report that we could just share with community.
Yep. And just for council's knowledge, one of the things that you're going to see for the first time this year is the municipal annual report. And the municipal annual report, one of the sections that's required to be in there is a commentary of your grants to organizations for community economic development and stuff. Celeste and I are still working on how we're going to lay out ours and stuff for 2023. You'll see that in June. Deadline for us to file that with you is the end of June. So we're targeting that for our work. But you will see a section dedicated to the grants that were issued and what was done with it. So that there will be an amalgamation of all that data in one spot for you and for the public to see how public dollars were spent.
Thank you very much. Any further comments or questions?
I think it's ready to go.
Okay, so that will come to the next meeting. Okay, on to fee waiver reduction request policy. You speaking on that as well?
Sure. So this one did come to committee before. We went back and looked at our notes, and there wasn't much in the way of concerns from you folks at that time. But we were linking it to the grants policy, so we were keeping all this together because they kind of work hand in glove with each other. So we figured if we were bringing the grants back, we were going to bring this back one more time to see if there's any concerns. But if committee's prepared to send this through, we'll do the last polishing and stuff for grammar and punctuation, whatever needs to be done. And then we'll slide this one alongside the grants for at your meeting in a couple weeks.
Questions? Councillor Greenlaw?
Yeah, I just want to make sure I've read it right. So for a reduction in fee, Director, you can approve it for up to 35%. But if it's a complete waiver, it comes to council.
That'll be correct.
Thank you. Yep. Yep.
You've done a good job.
Wait till you start working on 42.
Okay, Community Emergency Plan bylaw. Again, Jeff.
We'll cover for Sean for a little bit. So yes, Mr. Morton does send his regrets with our shifting of the meeting. He had a conflict out at the fire hall for training, so he's looking after his folks out there, which is good, where we want him. So this is the first early attempt at a new bylaw for the urgent emergency plan. It is we got some work to do. We wanted to get you guys a first look. The big thing here is most of this bylaw is governed by the act of legislation that thou shalt have a committee, thou shalt have. So there's some wiggle room of what that committee might look like and things like that, but so that we can work on. But this is this year for your first look and comment and a little bit of education, and then Sean and I are gonna keep working on that. As far as getting this set up, but we want to get this set up because, as you know, Mr. Morton's been working away at our emergency plan, and one of the things the committee's job is to look at that plan and help continue to refine it and develop it as we move forward. So we will be looking for eventually this bylaw to be passed, and volunteers from council to sit on that committee and work with Sean and myself, and probably some representation from time to time from New Brunswick EMO, because one of the things that Sean and I are very adamant is that whatever plan we're trying to work from needs to interact with regional provincial planning as well. It's no good for us to have a plan that says we're going to get people out of an area, and once we do that, they're the province's problem. But if we don't have know what the province's plan is or how they're going to make those determinations, then we can't properly educate our people, our residents, and our responders as well. So it's a matter of trying to work our plan and then layer on top the EMO plan, and EMO, Sean and I have had our run-arounds with EMO as far as their planning or what we consider to be lack thereof in certain areas. But we're going to get this process kind of rolling. So I don't really know that, if there's any immediate comments from you folks, that's fine. But this is going to keep being refined over the next little bit, because it came to my office a little bit late in the process for getting on the agenda. So I've got some work to do with it as well, to clean up some issues and concerns I have, and then we'll be bringing it back again.
And you'll be forming a committee, right, as you work on it?
Once the bylaw is adopted, we will be forming a committee, we being council and staff, and it's a joint effort, each of us having different roles, and moving that forward. So it's, but I don't think this will take too long to get ready for first reading. Probably we might have it ready for first reading. We have to do some revisions because it's a bylaw. You get to look at it 3 times, so I don't mind if it's a little bit still in process at first reading, because it does get the much like this meeting will, it gets the knowledge to the citizens out that this stuff is being worked on. There's a plan on how it's going to go, and we've already got citizens that emailed today, I think it was, or this morning or last night, with some comments that they had looking through our agenda and saying, hey, did you here, there, and everywhere. And Celeste and I are kind of going through that as well, as trying to figure out, okay, how do we clean this up, and how do we consider other opinions, whether it's from you folks or from citizens that happen to read the package, because we like extra eyes. They do help. So, but that's, yeah, it's here kind of for your first ability to digest it a little bit and know that it is coming, and we are working on it. We're getting it on paper. It just we're juggling it with all the other priorities as well and whatnot.
Councillor Greenlaw?
Yeah, needs a fair amount of work. I know Councillor Eastman and I talked about it there today, and he kind of thought it might be a good idea if we had a workshop. Maybe you sit down, we can go through it. You know, both of us have got a fair amount of ICS experience, and, you know, might help, because, I mean, I've got probably 10 or 12 or 15 things. I'm sure Councillor Eastman's got a few. I don't know if something like that it would help or not, if we can sit down and with you know, Sean and work away at it, and then maybe the first draft will be a little less cumbersome.
Councillor Rodas?
I think too, it would be really great. I'm not sure the best way to communicate with community about this, but even just frequently ask questions about our service delivery, like how we respond to emergency, how our firefighters are dispatched, where, you know, I think with amalgamation, that's been a little bit confusing for people, and it's been a little bit stressful. And I know there's been more talk about fears around wildfires starting this summer and how we're going to handle that just with what happened last year in Boca Bac. So just talking about this is really great. And even if something could be sent out in the water bills, just even like some sort of one-page even newsletter on, you're smirking, so maybe you've already thought of this. This is good, though. It's just, I'm really thankful that we're taking this seriously and we're speaking about it, because it does seem to come up quite a bit. And I think last year was a demonstration of something that we're not quite used to, and that can create some stress and anxiety. So thanks for looking into it, especially going into the summer. And I'd love to keep talking about what it would look like to house people in an emergency. And I still don't really have any idea how that can look for us, but I think we can do some brainstorming maybe at a committee of the whole on what properties we have or what assets we have in order to house people, and how that even works, because I'm not even clear about that. So
Yes, I admit I was smirking. Just this afternoon, Sean and I were working on how best to send out some initial material around wildland fire. Obviously, you know, Alberta's burning again, and Fort Nelson is in trouble. And it's making the news, and it does make people nervous. So, despite the fact that we don't have all this cleaned up the way we want, and our plan cleaned up the way we want, what Sean and I were working on was similar to what you're saying: is how do we send out some messaging about, you know, what are best practices before a fire hits? What are best practices? What can I expect if there's am I going to be communicated with? You know, where do I go for information? All that fun stuff. So we're working on that. And like I said, just this afternoon, we're like, okay, we're not ready to have evac routes and all that other things planned out yet. But we can tell people where they can go, where they're going to be able to go for information. We can encourage them yet again to download the Alertable app and say, we're going to be pushing a lot of really good information through that in the event of an emergency. You know, like, so we can start putting some of that stuff out. And because, yeah, I mean, there are things that we know that are in the business that we maybe aren't that worried about. Like, I think, you know, Sean may have mentioned at the last meeting, down firewood, the down trees. Not that big a concern this year. So but to other people who aren't in the know about the nature of how that works, it's a concern. It looks like firewood, and so we can try and get some communication out saying, okay, you know, that comfort level of stuff of, you know, we are aware, we have plans in place. So this is how things would roll out right now, and this is how you can get information and what we would ask you to do in the event of. So we're working on something to get in the very short order here, to push out through Alertable and Facebook and all that fun stuff that we do, and try and use some of our friends in other agencies who have good ready-made off-the-shelf products that we can share, and do things that way to try to keep people vigilant about and be aware of what their surroundings and keep them safe.
Thank you. Councillor Eastman?
Do we have clear and concise lines on what our municipality is?
Yeah, we do. We have it GIS mapped. The the outside edges of our boundaries. Some of the other detail that I know Councillor Greenlaw's been working very hard to try and get me access to some other GIS information hasn't come to fruition yet. But the outside boundaries are totally GISed, and we know where they are, and we know where our fire response boundaries are as well. Those are well established, even though, as you know from Mr. Morton, we're trying to amend those. We do know what's out there. And I will say we're fortunate that Mr. Morton does have a very good relationship with the Fire Marshal's office and GNB as far as the wildland fire stuff goes, and that they do converse on a regular basis, and they have a great working relationship. We do benefit from that on the regular through the years, so we are lucky that way as well.
Okay, Councillor.
We've got a friend in the EMO as well, because the head of the EMO is a soldier buddy of mine. So, just to let you know.
There we go.
Thank you, Councillor Heisler.
Yeah, the thing that worries me is it might not be firewood this year, but next year it's going to be still laying there. And there's a lot of people in this district that have woodlots that don't necessarily have the resources to clear up those places. So I don't know what kind of program is out there provincially, or I know there was talks in PEI, and a lot of that wood is not marketable because of the weight of it, and they get paid by the weight. And once it dries out, it weighs whatever, 30% less, so it's not worthwhile harvesting any of that timber or anything else. So I don't know if the onus goes on some of the woodlot owners to clean up some of their deadfalls, and I know it's difficult to even get in through the woods. To walk from A to B now, you have to walk A to Z. Like you're walking around things all over the place, right?
Just to that, my immediate thought is, given the widespread fact of the downed timber in the province, that might be something for UMB to be considering as far as talking to the government about a program before next summer rolls around, to say, how do we incentivize getting some of this stuff cleaned up by these types of small operators and things like that. It could be that. So, not to necessarily pass the buck, but I'm looking over at Councillor Greenlaw saying maybe I can assist you in drafting something to bring to the board there or something, and have that conversation with the government.
Okay, Councillor Rodas.
I'd also like to do an assessment of our local parks that we have currently, like Dover Hill, Elm Park, because the reality is, if there are encampments in some of those areas, there is a higher risk of fire, and I would want to make sure that we almost have like a non-negotiable parks that, because if Sean would deem, for instance, Elm Street very, very challenging to respond to a fire if people are very deep within, then that would be something that I would want to know, so that would be at a time where it's a high-risk zone, fire zone, that we would ask people to relocate to a different area. And I think we just need to talk about what those areas should be and could be, and also look at some of the outskirts of Elm Street Nature Park. I know property owners have shared with me that they're concerned about the dry brush, and they're not 100% sure who owns specific parts of the land on the outskirts of Elm Street. So even if we can help clarify with owners, like, we own up to here and we will do our best to clear this part of the brush, and then this part is owned by, just kind of working in collaboration with the citizens right on those streets to say, we know you have big concerns about your proximity to this park, because Dover there is some impact there, but Elm Street, I mean, if you had a really horrendous fire breakout on that street, you would probably have a real problem. So just talking specifically to those residents and asking them to come together and kind of clarifying what we can do in our bounds as a municipality, and then how we can also involve the province in those conversations, and encouraging them to email their own local MLA and ask too if they can get some government support to come in, and if it's owned by the province, then it would be good if they could clear it up as well.
Thank you. Any more? Councillor Wright?
Thank you. I just had one question. It says that in the very first part of the preamble that each municipality, and the point B was, shall appoint a director of municipal emergency measures and prescribe their duties. So I'm assuming that appointment comes from council, or is it a standing directive, I guess, under the act that a certain person, like say the fire chief for the area, becomes that person, or is that somebody separate because of the workload? I'm just curious as how that works.
In most places that I've been employed, it's one of two people. It's either the fire chief or it's the chief administrative officer. Two philosophies. I personally subscribe to the fact that in the event of a major emergency, I choose not to have my best first responder sitting at a desk in an office. I put him out in the field where quite frankly, where he belongs. And then I take over the reins of the Emergency Operations Center as the director. That has been in 90% of the places I've worked. That's how we've set it up. In one jurisdiction, council was adamant that they wanted the fire chief in there, so I ended up being the deputy director and he was the director. But yeah, so that's something that usually the committee will discuss and kind of beat around and bring a recommendation forward to council. It can be anybody. I will say currently, and probably hopefully not too big a surprise, the two most adequately trained people that we currently have on staff are Sean Morton and myself. We've done our ICS 300s, and I think he may have done 400 while I was out of town. And so we have a lot of training to do at the lower levels to really bolster our emergency system here. But yeah, so that's it. Kind of comes through the development of the plan and the program of how you want to divvy up the responsibilities. But it's usually one of those two people.
Anybody else? So this one we leave for the end of the month? It's working. Okay. Mining exploration municipal consent process. Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So what I'm sharing with you today is information that's passed on to me from the mining recorder's office during our chat about, as we're trying to figure out the process for getting consents to exploration companies that are trying to do what they do and now find themselves inside municipal boundaries and under the Act, require municipal consent to undertake their work. So you'll see the application here from Woodstock. I think it asks all the right questions, quite frankly. And I think it's a good model for us to work from. I have one concern there in their documents is they never use the word consent, which is actually a word that's in the legislation, which is required. One of the things I've been talking to both the mining companies, representatives, and the mining recorder's office about is using that word consent so that it's the word they need under the Act, but also making sure that we build into our consent form or our consent statement the fact that all the operations and all the everything has to do with that site are under the jurisdiction of the government of New Brunswick, and they are the policing authority, and they, we're consenting kind of because we have to under the Act, but we're not taking responsibility for it. And so working on some language around that. Mining recorder's office thinks it's a good idea. The mining companies they like the idea of that it will actually say consent on it, but they fully understand that we're not the ones going in to check what they're doing on the site. And they have to comply with their GMB regulations. The part that one of the things we have to decide is whether every application needs to come to council to be reviewed and approved, or whether that authority is going to be delegated down. You'll see in this document, it's the CAO and clerk that are signing off on it, not the mayor or councilors. I think from an expediency point of view, it's nice if it can be bureaucratic, and we say, here are the conditions under which the approval can be granted. If they don't meet them, they don't meet them, and then we can just do it. Because these things, I have two on my desk right now that are waiting for, and they're very patient. I'll give the exploration companies credit. They're waiting as they know we're getting our feet under us. But I have two on my desk right now that are saying we need to start kind of this summer on their work plan. So, I guess question number one is whether we think the questions that are asked, that Woodstock is asking, meet what we would want to know about the project. And question number two is, at what level of our operation would we like the consent for these exploration things to be dealt with?
Being a little bit of a visionary here and not the Grinch, but do we have a municipal plan on where we want to see ourselves in 20 years, 40 years, 50 years out? Because this mining, once it gets started, we can't roll it back.
Yeah, I mean, we do have our municipal plan, and that's being conceived right now for the entire municipality. We have the old town one, which will have we will have to take into consideration some of the mining claims that are in the northern portion of our municipality for sure in that discussion. I think at this stage of the game, again, as you said, you were being a visionary. At this stage of the game, when we're doing drilling for exploration, it's we're not talking about open pit mining and stuff at this point. That's a whole other approval process that needs to go down if they wanted to go down that work. So it may be that our policy, our procedure that we design has the two levels, right? If it's the low impact, you're going to drill a core and take your samples and go on, that can be dealt with as long as it checks all these boxes. But once it goes into any kind of operational plan or something, then it has to come to council for a broader discussion. Like, because I can see, I totally see you. I wouldn't even want to be the one signing the consent form for the massive open pit mining operation out there. So, yeah.
Underground too, and like I say, you take the void, it's going to impact your.
Yeah.
Okay, Councillor Rodas.
I just have a question for clarification because frankly, I'm not super familiar with mining. So how is it of benefit to a citizen and to our municipality? Like, if that could just be explained to me and the public who ask questions about this, what are the benefits of mining and exploration work being done within the bounds of our municipality? How does it benefit the citizen? How does it benefit our community? And are there even benefits? Because that's a hard sell sometimes with citizens who have fears around, something being found near their land, on their land. Or I guess that's a whole process in itself. I recognize that. But from what he shared in the presentation, it seemed like a citizen had reported they had maybe come across something and then reached out to the mining company and then they came in. But are there situations where it's the kind of opposite way around and it's that consent piece, right? Like, at what point do you really, does it get kind of handed over and it's just 20, 30, 40 years down the road and your entire property is being mined? And that's just something, if you have any clarification, that's fine. Or even if they could come back, I know they're planning on coming back to committee of the whole and sharing more information. And he kind of gave a little tidbit and plans to come back. But most citizens ask me, what's in it for me? I don't really have the answer because I'm not as familiar.
Well, I mean, it's twofold. At the exploration stage, I think Mr. Kodor mentioned it in his presentation. They need permission to enter onto your property to do work, or not to enter on, to do any destructive work. Sorry, they can walk across your land if they want to, but they can't take down a tree. They can't drill a hole, and they can walk around and pick up a rock and look at it. But if they want to do anything that would be considered destructive or disruptive to the land, they need your permission. There are. I know from other jurisdictions where I worked, people who have gotten a fair bit of work done on their property in order to get some permissions from mining companies because they've got big equipment coming in and, they want trees removed or they want drainage dug or whatever. And a lot of the companies are willing to do that in order to get your permission. But there's not, outside of those kind of deals that can be made with the company, the exploration, it has some minor benefit in the area. Their crews will, if they're in the area, will eat here or they'll sleep here. Or so there is some minor economic stuff. Where the argument becomes if they find enough to operate a mining operation, The mining operators will tell you that it's employment and it's, it's good paying jobs, usually for over a long period of time. The environmentalists will say that you're destroying the environment, and you'll end up having those conversations. I know that from my time in the Yukon and dealing with gold miners. Like, there's two sides of that coin, but that's we're a long way from that. But that being said, it is a conversation for a municipal plan, for the community to have an opportunity to weigh in on what, whether that's acceptable or not acceptable in the long term in the community. So I don't know what that was, but but yeah, like that's kind of where the interplay comes of what's an economic benefit versus what are the inconveniences, and a lot of that will be dependent on location. A lot of the two exploration requests for consent that I have on my desk are nowhere near a residence. They are in the middle of Irving land or Crown land. They won't be using our roads. They won't be, they're all on the Irving logging roads and to get to their locations, and very, very minimal impact, negative impact to the community. That might not be the case for all exploration and discoveries, but at this point, it's.
So worry of open Pandora's box.
So.
Just thank you, Jeff, because I knew you did some time in the Yukon, so I figured you were familiar with this. So it's just nice to be able to share that with the public, and I get that question a lot, and just think it speaks to more of a conversation flow. So just thanks for clarification.
Thank you. Anyone else? Oh, Councillor Wright.
Thank you. So it's my understanding that this consent that we need to do with the companies is based on the fact that they're already doing work that the province has approved of, correct? So my question would be, my first question, we can't stop that if they've been granted approval, can we?
The two projects currently on my desk are not active. They have their approvals from the mining coroner's office and the government to proceed. They have their permission from the landowner. They have all the pieces in place, and they had gotten that prior to the municipal reform. But because they hadn't actually put their drill into the ground yet, they are not allowed to put their drill into the ground until they deal with the municipality, because now the municipality has enveloped their location. So if we say no, then they'll pick up their equipment and they'll move somewhere else. They've got other areas to explore and money to spend in other places.
Thank you. Just one follow-up statement. They mentioned that there was lithium to be found, and of course lithium, as they mentioned in their report, is used for the electric vehicle batteries that are in so high demand. So there's always a trade-off somewhere, but we can't say we want this to be a part of our society, but you can't do the work to get that. So just a follow-up statement, I guess. And I did want to say as well, you were mentioning bringing it to council or not for approval, depending on the level. Regardless of how it goes, it would be nice for it to be an info package in each council report each month if one comes in, just so that the community is made aware that there's this work happening.
Thank you. Councillor Heislip.
Just keep in mind now, if it goes to operational, there's a lot of balls in the air, and there's an Environmental Assessment Act that's going to be triggered. There's going to be all kinds of opportunity for public input and for council input, from socioeconomic impacts to environmental impacts to whether there's a yellow spotted salamander there that could stop the project right on the spot. I mean, there's all kinds of things that you have to take into consideration. So that's way down the road, and sometimes takes years to get through the hoops for that. So just keep that in mind when it does. Everybody will know about it if there's going to be a lithium mine in Circular County. Don't worry about that.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Councillor Greenlaw?
Yeah, just for the exploration part, the form, I'd like to see it added that there's proof of the approval from the landowner. rather than just have you got the approval. I'd like to have it say, that you provide proof that the landowners agreed. And then I'd also like to see on there that there's somewhere where they guarantee restoration for any intrusive exploration that they've done, right? So that's what I'd add to it. Yeah, but it's just nice to, I think it's good for, yeah. Okay? That's it for me.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay. Is that coming back next at the meeting? Yes.
I'll advise you not to adopt Woodstock's paperwork. But no, we'll do some redrafting and, again, take some of these suggestions into consideration as well. But like I say, I do have a couple of keen guys that have work that was approved under the government and now are stalled. So while they're patient, I did promise them that I would try to avoid any unnecessary delays. So we'll be working on this as quickly as we can and get it back to you.
Thank you. Now, the 2024 Sidewalk Renewal Program.
Okay, so trying to give you some context in which John and I have been working here. You'll recall at the close of our budget discussions, we had set aside money for sidewalks, we had set aside money for roads, and we had set aside money for the road infrastructure study, condition assessment. The condition assessment, the field work just completed this week. We're looking at the results of that coming in at the end of June, the full report coming in. The direction given to staff at the time the money went into the budget was no road money to be spent until the condition report has been presented, and we've honored that, except for minor maintenance. What's going to be the challenge is that when we start getting that far into the year, the road work is probably not going to happen based on, by the time we tender and get it done, it's not the best idea to start trying to do mill and pave when the snow flies or when it gets too cold. The product doesn't hold up. So we started looking closer at the sidewalk program. We did an analysis of the town core with the exposed aggregate, the pink exposed aggregate, and we did an analysis all the way from the traffic circle to Prince William. Probably no shock to anybody in this room or anybody that may be watching online, our sidewalks are in dire need of work. So we were trying to decide how to approach this year's program. We have a challenge when it comes to the exposed aggregate. The pink stuff that makes it all nice and pretty is running out. It's not going to be available locally anymore. We know who purchased the last bit of it. We are not the only community who uses it, and there isn't enough of it. If we wanted to renew the downtown, there isn't enough of it available. We've done our math. So when it comes to the downtown core, we are recommending that unless there's a real safety issue or something like that, that we not work on that this year, and that we actually work with our friends at the BIA and Chamber to discuss the situation and discuss what a new aesthetic look for the downtown would look like, using a different product into the long-term planning, and working kind of hand in glove with them to say, what do we want this place to look like? So my intention, my hope is, with your blessing, would be to set up a working group to look specifically at that, and bring back a recommendation on a product and a look, to be working into a plan. For this year, we would like to improve the sidewalk, basically the entire length of King Street from the traffic circle to Prince William and all the spots that need to be done. To do that, we're going to need about $161,000. We had set aside 60 in our sidewalk program. What we would like the committee to consider is making a recommendation to council to move some of the money that was earmarked for the roads in this year's active program into the sidewalk program, and to make the funds available to do that job, get it done, have good sidewalk all the way. One of the things that you should keep in mind is eventually King Street will need to be redone. We know the condition it's in. When the government helps us with those projects, they do not fund sidewalk. So it's not like we're putting it in and losing out on the grant application. They will not pay for sidewalk under their capital program. We always have to pay for that, which is why King Street sidewalks didn't get done when the road did, or at least not the full extent, because the town didn't have enough money to do them. So if we were to do this improvement project and get that cleaned up and in good condition, if the money comes down for King Street, we're not losing out on anything there. And it opens up our opportunity in 2025, we believe, to move onto some of the side streets, the less trafficked ones that are in really bad shape as well, because we always focus on King Street and Milltown Boulevard and because they're important, but so are the ones that are in the residential neighborhoods and need a lot of work as well. So it allows us to shift our focus over there, knowing that that main section is done, while we're doing some work with the working group on the long-term downtown vision. So this is our pitch to you to consider a budget amendment to move some money in our capital program from roads into sidewalks this year, and then come June, probably the July meeting, you're going to have the road condition assessment with their proposed implementation plan that will educate your budgeting for 2025 and beyond. So this is our proposal. Open to questions or comments.
Okay. Councillor Wright?
Thank you. My question is, how much did we, because my memory fails me, how much did we set aside for the roads?
It was a $300,000 budget. And I believe, quick before I'm the last thing, probably what that was, it was $300,000, and that was combined with the 60 for sidewalk?
220 or something.
So I think there's 240. I think it was 300,000, and we carved 60 out specifically for sidewalks, and the remainder was left in the roads.
So my follow-up question would be, is there any plan, or would it just be moved out, the remaining amount that had been set aside for roads?
So my proposal would be that the remaining amount that's set aside for roads would be moved into the general capital reserve before the end of the year, so that it didn't become surplus and be out of our hands for a year. So we just move it into general capital reserve, and then we'd be available January 1st, 2025 to fund the road work that it will be planned based on your condition assessment report.
Thank you. Councillor Harding?
Thank you. So you're saying from the traffic circle down to Prince William, correct? And that's for the side now. Is there any way that we could use some of that money to do the road from along there by Tim Hortons to the Superstore, which is absolutely horrible? I mean, if we're going to spend some money, let's spend it on that. Well, I mean, the sidewalk's fine, but let's get a little more money and see if we can't do that. Oh, yes?
We can, I guess at this point, what I could say is I could get a cost estimate from the engineers about what a mill and pave there would cost. Honestly, my expectation would be the mobilization of the equipment would cost more than the actual job, which is tough, but that's the way the industry works, unfortunately. But we can get an estimate and bring that back to you for sure, and look at what could be done.
Okay, it's really bad for the summertime.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Jeff.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Heisler?
Glad you mentioned that about the exposed aggregate, because I know there was concerns about that exposed aggregate before. It's just hard to walk on. Seniors are finding it hard to walk on. There's a lot of, I'm going to say control joints, but they're not control joints. That's why they split and crack and everything else. Just like a panel inside a panel. It's framed out, so they split, and it's just not conducive to our weather here. Something like that. It looks great when it's good, but when it's new, but it doesn't take very long for it to be all cracked up and broken and everything. So I'm glad you moved away from that, because I just did a quick math there on the if you use just the 4-inch brush, was less than 200,000 off that estimate, that first estimate there, they were gonna do the panels.
Mhm.
Do the exposed aggregate, and I think there must be some other ways out there that are people are doing it. Paving stones, I don't really like those. They settle and grass grows up in between them and everything. There's got to be some, you know, let's not reinvent the wheel. There's things out there in eastern Canada that they're using that are probably more conducive to our weather here. And just a follow-up there, I don't know, the King Street, though, that's where we get our funding from, through the provincial government, isn't it? So if we went and did that from Tim Hortons onto Superstore, we might miss out on funding for that later on, or potential funding for that could do that next year, right? Because remember there was a hold on it for 3 years or something like that? That's why our streets look the way they do right now on King Streets, because somebody wrote that letter to us and said they're holding back funding. And I think that was provincial government. So, yes, it was. So, I don't want to pass the buck, but I mean, that's where we get our money. That's where we get our money every year.
Well, I was going to make this comment earlier, but I'll make it now. This is an election year, ladies and gentlemen. On the 21st of October, we'll be going to the polls to elect a new provincial government. Is there any way that we can leverage some money to do these things? I mean, I don't know. But I mean, other time, there's been, you know, it seems to me that we've got money around election time. You know, I mean, not just your pint of liquor and your, you know, candy bar.
They refused the needle box funding, so I mean, that's little.
What's up with that? Okay, Jeff?
It's not my job to play politics, but what I will point out as public information is Andrea Mason actually shared her road budget for her constituency in an election year. And I think it was $174,000. So there is not, does not seem to be a great desire to move money from those surpluses that have been racked up over the years into infrastructure at this point. So certainly lobbying is well within your mandate to do, but it's just from what I saw from our constituency next door, it's a tough sell, I think, right now.
Okay, Councillor Rodas?
Well, it's nice too when it comes to communication to actually share the difference in how much a certain amount of money can impact the sidewalks in terms of length versus the roads. If you could put that information out publicly too, because I know you had talked about just how much road would be done with 300K, for instance, and it's really not much. And I can't remember what the figure was you said for. I think it was 250,000 for 1 kilometer, maybe. So I'm going to ingrain that in my brain so I can say that repeatedly. But I do think, too, the sidewalks are more of a risk right now to seniors for falling, and even, you know, my kids scootering and biking. Like, there's some pretty big dips there in the sidewalk. So if we can just eliminate that risk and then put more, you know, have more bang to our buck, I'm fine waiting till next year, I guess.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Jeff?
Just listening to the tone of the discussion, since no one said it. So can I take it as direction that we will bring a resolution to next council meeting to do the budget amendment necessary to undertake the sidewalk work in 2024? All right, that is much appreciated, and we'll take it. We'll start doing some background, getting some things ready, because we really want to get this as soon as school, basically after school is out. We want to be able to get on those sidewalks. So.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next is Hanson Cove. Should we ask?
Hey, you want to
Councillor Cornish. I don't think he's hearing me. Councillor Cornish.
That's your.
Okay.
Well, you got one eye tonight, so you gotta be very careful. Cataract moves, so hard to see, so. Anyway, myself, Earl, Wade, Jeff, myself got together a month or so ago, discuss the conditions of Hanson's Cove. And there's two aspects going right now. Jeff would like to make a proposal to put a package together to ask for some help with cleaning up along the water's edge because it is extremely dangerous. I can't underline that any deeper because it's full of big logs, big spikes, and the water is washed out on both sides, and kids jump off of that continually. And people come in with canoes and can't even get out of their boat without falling out of them. In addition to that, Jeff, I did run into our MLA, and she's working on the other end of it. She's trying to get the road redesignated again, so that for some reason that road got taken off the value list, I guess, because we need that road for fire safety. We have a lot of loading accidents in there. The Irvings use that to get to their rail site, the RCMP and Customs use that for operations where drug smuggling takes place. And last but not least, we cannot get an automobile down in there with the type of automobiles we have now. You'd have to have at least a four-wheel drive truck. And if you're towing a boat, you're probably going to pull the axle off it. And it's a darn shame because that's just one of our three major entrances to St. Croix River where people use it low problems.
Okay, Jeff?
Yeah, so as your agenda indicates on the note, basically what I advised the councillors who joined me for a chat about this is that there may be an opportunity to seek out environmental trust fund money to do cleanup work. Highly unlikely they would fund the boat ramp and other improvements that are on the hopes and dreams list for that area, as the four of us sat and chatted about the value there. But I would need a direction from you folks to work on the application and send that in. So that's why we're here today, is to see if there's enough support to dedicate some of my time and probably Celeste's time to doing the application form and getting that the paperwork into the government.
Okay, Councillor Wright?
I just have one question. If the cove is used by that many organizations, government entities, private entities, why is it falling to us to advocate for that? Do none of them have, is this in a no man's land that nobody takes responsibility for? I guess why is it us having to do it? Not that I begrudge it, I think it's important, but I'm just wondering why it has to fall on our shoulders.
I guess my argument to that would be, of the entities that are in play in the area, we're the only entity that really has a recreational / tourism interest. The other ones have profit and things like that they're more interested in. So when we're looking at this as a potential recreation asset, if we don't take the lead, nobody else up there will.
Councillor Wright?
Thank you. Just going to say, if we do some work and make some improvements, some of them might be inclined to open their hands and be generous to us as well for other improvements we want.
Councillor Heisler?
Quick comment, I guess. I think it's a good idea to apply for the funding for sure. I go up in that area, but I look at the pictures and I know the area. Just got to be cognizant that some of those areas now that are full with those logs is actually created habitat. So it's a lot of hesitant, I think, through Wawa permit, because I know I've applied for them for major salmon fishing sites that filled in with gravel over the winter. Hard sell, but they do because it's a multi-million-dollar tourism strategy, and you got a lot of people that own pools and everything that they allow it, but that's going to be a hard sell for the environmental trust, because that does create, it's been there for so long, it's created habitat now. If you go up there and you want to catch a bass, you throw it underneath those logs, coming out, I know. But I mean, I think it's great to go and apply for it and see where it goes. Yeah, right, see where it goes. It might be reach smooth sailing, but yeah, okay.
So road.
They're pavement.
Also, I think if we start here, it's a great opportunity to show, really like hone in on the rural areas and the assets that we have. And I think it would be really wonderful at some point to really talk about municipal signage to allow people who are in the downtown core to know how to get to these areas, because there are people who have lived here their whole lives and they have never fished at Hanson's Cove and they've never been down the St. Croix, and they're not really 100% sure how to even get there. So I know that I think with a good start, even if it's just with the boat ramp, I think that's a great investment for, a rural gem like this, and then we can just build on that from there.
Okay. Councillor Harding?
Thank you. Well, this looks a lot different. Back in the day, when I worked for CBSA, we used to clear bass boats at 5:30 in the morning. Yeah, oh, yay. But anyway, it looks much different now, and it looks really polluted type thing. So, yeah, anything that we can do to help that, I think. And as far as, I think somebody said it, that was you, Jeff, that the RCMP can't get up there. The road is, So let's see what we can do for Hanson Cove.
Anybody else? So we good with this? Everybody? Yes? Okay. Okay. Okay, thank you. The next thing is the Visitor Information Center location discussion.
So the VIC, we actually, Kevin and I were talking about this afternoon again. Funny how things time themselves. We thought we were at a time crunch as far as the VIC and the deal with the province goes. And then the province decided to graciously approve us to operate in the same manner we did last year out of the little kiosk for one more year, which buys us some time. So Kev's got his crew up and running, basically getting ready to go. We've hired our students and various things to take care of that. So what I wanted to do was talk to committee about the concept of, once again, me trying to build bridges with our partners, but to look at again another small working group with the BIA, the chamber, possibly a member from your side of the table here, to actually look at the long-term ideas around the VIC, what we want it to look like, all those things, and take this kind of benefit of another season that the government has been good enough to give us to get a good solid plan together. Again, like I try to do with everything, my goal would be a recommendation coming from a working group in September or October when we're in the midst of our budget discussions, so we can make a good solid plan of how we want to address it. So kind of putting that out there as an idea and a way forward with this project. I know there were some concerns around the original, the one concept of Gateway Park, but I think if we have a working group, we can beat that location up, pros, cons, whatever. We can beat up the waterfront here in front of the GCC, pros and cons, and kind of really work it out as to what we think is the primary one or two spots that we can bring to council for final decisions. And again, building those communication bridges with some of those agencies that have kind of felt out of the loop over the last little bit, and going about it that way. So that's my proposal.
Okay, any questions, discussion? Okay. Okay, I guess we're at the end of this meeting, right? Would someone like to move that we move into close? Councillor Wright, and seconded by Councillor Harding. All those in favor? Aye. Nay? So we're going to take a little break before we move? Yeah. Okay, thank you.